Welcome back everyone to another Weather at a Glance video. In today's forecast, we are going over our official winter forecast for the winter season of 2023 to 2024, all coming up in just a bit. Now, before we go into today's video, I do want to go over some patterns that we will be going over in today's video. The El Nino pattern, NAO, and PNA. So these are the three that I want to pay a main attention to in today's video. These are the ones that are going to be influencing our winter the most. We do have a lot of other patterns that do influence our weather, especially in the wintertime, but we are focusing on these three specific patterns in today's video. Now, as for the forecast maps, we are going over our temperature anomaly forecast map, our precipitation anomaly forecast map, our snowfall anomaly forecast map, and the overall forecast map, which we'll be going over at the end of the video. Now, before we get to those maps, I do want to show you what is going to be determining our snowfall. This is a graph that shows you the different types of snowfalls that each area measures according to the types of dynamics that we see and the type of patterns that we see. So on the far right, that is your 1950 to 2015 average accumulation that has been measured every single year. This is just like the average overall, the average total that has been measured over the course of those years. So that's your set standard. And now what I want you to do is look at the patterns that we are expecting for this winter, which is a strong El Nino and a negative NAO pattern. These two factors are coming together this winter. More than likely, we are seeing that. We've already been seeing that throughout the fall, and we are expecting these two factors to continue into this winter, which will likely influence according to this. So as you can see, I want you to take your totals over here for the average, and you can compare them to a strong El Nino and a negative NAO pattern. You can see a lot of these areas in the Northeast are expecting above, even well above average snowfall, especially for areas like Buffalo, New York. You guys already see a lot of snowfall each season, but now we are expecting possibly even greater totals due to the negative NAO influence with that strong El Nino that we are currently seeing in place. Now, for the Western United States, you can see some areas are about average. Most areas are average, but we do see some areas such as Fairbanks, Alaska, 81.4 inches versus your average 65.1 inches. And we do see Tahoe City in California, we see well above average conditions for 251.1 inches of snowfall versus your 182.2 inches of snowfall. If this does continue, we're going to see great skiing conditions out there for the Sierra Nevadas. Definitely good season to go out there for the West. And it's going to be a good season out here in the northeastern United States as well. Now, the Midwest tells a different story. We are looking at slightly decreased conditions. Now, you'll see a lot of these areas are around average to what you would typically see in a season, but we do see a lot of areas also decreased in snowfall value. So this is still going to be a decrease, even though we have that negative NAO influence. That's going to take more of an influence on the eastern United States for that increased snowfall rather than in the Midwest and the north central United States. So a lot of these areas are going to experience slightly decreased to well below average snowfall. This is just what we're seeing with this season. So it'll maybe give you guys a break from what you have been experiencing for the past couple of winters. But if you are a snowfall lover, don't lose hope. Now, for the southern United States, we are expecting a lot of increased snowfall as well, especially for the south central. Now, for your areas in the southeast, we are expecting around average. But for our south central United States, we are expecting increased snowfall. You can see here, Dallas-Fort Worth area is expecting 2 inches above average, according to what we see here with this pattern. Now, that isn't a set value, but we do see with a strong El Nino, with the influence of a negative NAO pattern, we do see around 2 inches above that average over there. And then we also see for Little Rock, Arkansas, where you would normally see 5 inches of snowfall, we do see 13.3. That's a little over a foot there. That is definitely a lot more snowfall than what you would typically expect in a normal season. And Nashville, Tennessee at 10.8 inches versus your 8.6 total. So really some large increased snowfall totals there than what you would typically see in a season. Now, going over our first forecast map, this is our temperature anomaly forecast map. And here we're going to start up in the western United States with that increased temperature. So this is your slightly above average temperature region here for the western United States. And we do see these areas are expecting increased temperatures overall. Now, you aren't going to walk outside and say, wow, it's a lot warmer than what it usually is, but you will likely notice a slight change in the positive direction for your temperatures. Now, as for the eastern United States, we do see a lot of these areas, especially for the south central United States, are slightly below average there. So we are expecting slightly below average conditions. Generally a little bit cooler conditions overall, nothing too insane there, but we are expecting cooler conditions for much of the eastern United States. This is going to be due to that negative NAO influence, as well as a positive PNA pattern. So we are seeing that with positive PNA patterns, when those do come into play, we do see warmer conditions in the west and cooler conditions in the east, and that negative NAO influences those cooler conditions to an even further extent, where we are going to see those cooler conditions, especially out in the mid-Atlantic and the Appalachians. Now, for our final region here, we have our below average region. This is for the Appalachian Mountains and much of the mid-Atlantic, and we do see this is where it's going to be really cold this winter. We are expecting cooler conditions. A lot of these areas are going to be bitter cold at times. Now, we're not talking sub-zero temperatures, but we are talking about those deep cold temperatures. We're especially going to see this set in when that high pressure sets up over the region, and it's really going to lock those cold temperatures in and just keep all that cold air kind of lingering over here before low pressure systems come in and kind of utilize that to bring that snowfall, which we will go over on our snowfall anomaly forecast map. Now, moving on to the precipitation side of things, we are expecting slightly decreased precipitation here up for the northern Rocky Mountains. We did say in our past couple forecasts before this, we were expecting below average conditions for Seattle and Portland, but that has now changed. We are expecting average conditions for precipitation for these areas, and we are expecting decreased precipitation, slightly decreased that is, for the northern Rockies, because we don't expect a lot of that precipitation to pass over these western mountains here and over to the northern Rockies here. Now, as for California, we are expecting slightly above average conditions. So this is going to be some slightly increased precipitation, even at times really wet conditions overall compared to what you would normally see. So this is going to be slightly above average as for now, what we are expecting for your totals. Although keep in mind up in the Sierra Nevadas, that will change to even at times above average, which we will go over on our snowfall anomaly forecast map, but that could be above average, especially for the Tahoe City area in California. Now, for the eastern half of the United States, we are expecting a lot of areas in that slightly above average region here. We are expecting slightly above average conditions for much of these areas, and that is going to be influencing your winter in more of a snowy condition, especially for the northern United States. Now, down here for the south, that's going to be more storms and rain, but up here for the north, that is going to influence your snowfall quite significantly. Now, for the areas including the mid-Atlantic and much of the southeast United States, we are expecting above average conditions. This is where you're going to see those big winter storms come through. Now, down here for the south towards Charlotte and Atlanta, we are expecting those to be more mixed precipitation, but I do believe that up here for areas near Washington, D.C. and New York, this is going to be big time snowfall for you guys here. We are expecting those cooler conditions to set up and this above average precipitation. Not only do we have the polar jet stream setting up with that trough, but we also do see the subtropical jet stream is also going to meet here, and we're going to see a lot of precipitation linger over these areas over the coming months. Now, moving on to our snowfall anomaly forecast map, we are expecting slightly decreased precipitation over here for the northern Rockies, which will then result in slightly decreased snowfall. So this is basically going to be the same. You know, up in the northern Rockies, you're not going to see rainfall in the wintertime. It's very cold up there, and any precipitation that comes through is going to be in the form of snowfall, especially in the higher elevations. So this is going to lead to slightly below average snowfall as a result. Now, over here for the Sierra Nevadas, we are expecting slightly increased snowfall here. For a lot of these areas, we are expecting that increased snowfall there. And for areas around Tahoe City in California and around Lake Tahoe, we are expecting above average snowfall as a result of that increased precipitation. Now, over here for the central United States, we are expecting slightly above average snowfall. Anywhere from Dallas all the way up to Denver, we are expecting slightly increased snowfall as a result. Those cooler temperatures and that increased precipitation that we could see at times out here, although we are expecting around average precipitation. Now, for the eastern United States, we are expecting increased snowfall here, anywhere down to Atlanta, Georgia, all the way up to Buffalo, New York. We are expecting increased snowfall. This is going to set off around the coast, though, because we do see these areas around average, especially with those warmer Atlantic temperatures. But I do expect some of these areas down near the mid-Atlantic are going to see that increased snowfall due to those cooler temperatures and overall increased precipitation that is coming along. And finally, we do see that above average region here, anywhere from New York City all the way down to Charlotte, North Carolina. We do see any snowfall that you do get is likely going to be in big swaths due to these storms that come through. So it's really going to be more of a gamble down here near Charlotte, but up here towards DC and New York, you really are going to see those chances for those big time winter storms that are going to come through and with those large snowfall totals. All right, now moving on to our colorful overall forecast map here. This is usually the most favorite forecast map of the entire video. This is going to give you a summary of what you can expect to see for your season based on this forecast. So we're going to start off here in the western United States. We are expecting still wet. So this is definitely showing you that you're still expecting those wet conditions, especially down to California. So we were initially expecting drier conditions, but now we are expecting still wet conditions. So the wet is going to continue. It's still going to be a wet season, but not as drastic as a La Nina year. Now for our on and off region, we do expect those on and off conditions. So pretty much a mix of both. We could see those drier conditions set up down here, but if that subtropical jet stream really does kick into play, we could see some snowy conditions at time or even wet conditions at time. Obviously in Phoenix, Arizona, we're not really going to see any snowfall. That's a very rare occasion and we don't expect that. But we are expecting those wet conditions at time for much of these areas in the desert areas and out here in the western United States. We could see precipitation at times move into these areas. And it's not going to be an everyday thing, but we could see basically flip-flop conditions, on and off conditions of both dry and wet conditions overall. Now, moving on to the mountain snow region. This is a very typical region that we go over in every forecast because this is pretty standard. Even though we are expecting some decreased snowfall overall for the Northern Rockies, we are still expecting a lot of that mountain snow influence on these areas. There's really no other name to give this region. This area is always going to see that mountain snow, and it's a pretty stereotypical region for our winter season. Now, as for the northern United States, we are expecting those warmer conditions as a result of the El Nino. We are expecting some warmer conditions. So this isn't really going to be too much of a drastic change, but we are expecting those overall warmer conditions, and that's really going to lead to a decrease in snowfall activity and overall winter conditions that you normally would expect to see in a given winter season. Now, as for this giant white region here, we do see occasional snowfall. So this is going to be more of a region where you have variability in your storm systems. You aren't going to see tons of storm systems this season, but when you do, you could see snowfall, and it could be big at times too. So we're not saying you're going to see little flakes and that's it for this winter season. You could see some big storms in this region as well, but it's not going to be as common as for out here in the eastern United States due to that negative NAO pattern and that influence that we were seeing earlier. Now down here for the southern United States, we are expecting wet conditions. This is pretty standard. We are expecting wet conditions overall. So what does that mean? Basically precipitation, a lot of precipitation at that. So there's going to be a lot of systems moving through to that subtropical jet stream, and then they're going to carry northeastward, and that's going to lead to those winter storms that we do see up here. But yes, wet conditions overall, and at times you could see some cooler winter conditions, so you could see some mixed precipitation or even snowfall in these areas, but as you get further south, that's going to be less of a likelihood. Now, moving on to this pink region here, we see mixed. This is where we're going to see a lot of that mixed precipitation, a lot of what would typically be called a winter battle zone, but that's really what you're going to see for this area. Mixed conditions overall. We're not really going to see any snowfall or rain. It's really going to be kind of a mix of both. At times, we could see snowfall. At times, we could see rain, but overall, mixed conditions kind of flip-flopping back and forth. That's what we expect for this area. Now, moving on to the blue region here, this is the big snow region. This is where you're going to expect those big snowy conditions, a lot of those big storms to move through, and these large snowfall totals that are going to be expected for this region. That's really what we saw with the charts that we looked at earlier, and this is definitely going to be an area you want to watch out for this winter. If you are a snowfall lover, or if you want to know about the snowfall overall, this is definitely going to be a big region for snowfall this winter. Now, finally, we have our nor'easters region. This is the giant red region here, and we do go over this every winter pretty much because this is a pretty stereotypical region for winter seasons, but especially with the negative NAO influence with El Nino, this is going to be a big factor this year. And we aren't talking about we're going to have tons of nor'easters, and that's not to scare you or make you think that you're going to have tons of storms like that, but we are expecting, with the way that our jet stream is setting up, we could see a lot of the storm systems right up the coast, and that will provide those nor'easter conditions for these areas. So we're going to see a lot of that storminess along the coast this year, and some of those could even be nor'easters, and that's why we have this region here again for this El Nino season. All right, I want to thank you all so much for watching today's video. I want to give a big thanks to our channel members, David Hunter. Thank you for supporting the channel. I would ask you to consider subscribing for more use forecasts free of charge, and I would ask you to consider following the Weather at a Glance official Facebook page for more inside information and complimentary personal forecasts when you message me on my Facebook page. Again, I want to thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.